And then Indian Garden, by the time Ralph Cameron was on his way out, it was falling into disarray. And the Park Service took it over and fixed it up. And it's really become an incredible crossroads. We have the Tonto Trail that comes across, and we have the Bright Angel Trail coming down. We have the Plateau Point Trail heading out to Plateau Point. Even though all this bustling is going on, I still think it can be a very peaceful place. And here's a shot of Garden Creek flowing through there, and a little path through some high grasses. So I still think it's a really stunning and beautiful place to be. And I'm coming back a little bit to the people. I just think that it's really incredible the kind of people you can meet along the way. One of the people I interviewed and worked with is a guy named Gerd Nunner. He's kind of the new, setting the standard for the new ultra hiker. He, at the time of the book, crossed the river 180 times on his rim to rims, and he did a south rim to north rim, back to the south rim, back to the north rim hike in about 26 hours. So he kept himself busy. So if you ever see that stud puppy on the trail, that's the guy. He's been I think he's kind of setting the standard for the speed hikers on the trail. Dan Williams was one of the ultra runners I interviewed. Again, it's amazing the people you're kind of running into. And I see this guy who looks, like a little bit older, find out he's 60 years old, running rim to rim and back in 14 hours. He's like really into flowers. He still would stop and take pictures of the flowers. And I ran into a lot of people who I interviewed and found out that it was their very first time in the Grand Canyon. They were like, I'm going to backpack it. They didn't want to mess with the rim stuff. They wanted the full experience. So people like Michelle Lynn, Bill Vandergraaf is actually here tonight. He's a ranger down there, and I just think the backcountry rangers do such an incredible job. I mean, I always say next time you're in the canyon, you thank the backcountry rangers. Yes, only fools and rangers hike the canyon in the summer, and the rangers are there to help the fools. I was going to say, that was something that will stick with me for a long time. Shores, who I mentioned, again, a volunteer in the park, lives down there for $15 a day, and he just totally helps people in so many ways. I think the biggest thing is he should just go into psychotherapy, because I think what he does is convinces people they can still hike out of that canyon. They get down there and they start having a freak out on it. He's like, no, you can do it. Talks them through that whole process. And I don't know, and he had some incredible stories. I remember he told me about how easy it is to cut a mule in half. And because when the mules die, they got to figure out how to get it out of the canyon. He's telling me how, it's not as hard as you think to cut a mule in half. I was like, okay, I'll take your word for it. Rich Geobridge, he's a trail crew, one of the trail crew guys. Again, another incredible group of people working on the Grand Canyon. I mean, that is back-breaking work to build those trails, rehabilitate those trails. And the work they're doing on the South Kaibab now, they pull the grade, trying to fix the grades on those trails is really incredible. And it's not just like hard back-breaking work anymore. It's very detailed work. They're really trying to study like how the water drains through the trails and get those grades as perfect as they can get them, and figure out what materials work best. And there's a superintendent, Steve Martin, who's been there for a while. I believe he's going to be leaving the park, or he's left the park already, but I remember hearing that he was kind of down there with the plumb, like measuring out the trail to see that they were doing a good job. So so the work that they do is really incredible. They're starting to actually, with some of this money that they've gotten through the federal stimulus, actually putting up spike camps like halfway down the trail and working on the center parts of the trail, which they haven't done as much before. So really incredible what they do. The mule handlers, again, really incredible group of people. They just know how to work with those animals, and they have a really good expertise, and again, really blew me away. You just don't realize how many people are kind of behind the scenes, making the Grand Canyon corridor safe, making it effective, making people's experiences there amazing. And you know, it's getting to the point where you can almost rollerblade down that South Kaibab Trail. They fixed it up. It's so sleek. I remember the first time you're hiking it, you're like, or the first time I hiked it, it was like just all funky, and the work they're doing on that was pretty amazing. And I kind of come back to Jim and Juan again, two incredible people. Jim getting paraplegics down, Juan being a paraplegic saying, take me down, I want to go. Again, kind of shows us, you know, how people really long to make this experience part of their lives. So for me too, it was an incredible honor to be able to write this book, to write about this part of the world that I love, to write about this natural wonder that is the Grand Canyon that I love, and to really realize and through this book that the Rim to Rim hiking experience is really one of the true great outdoor adventures. It's not as long as like maybe an Appalachian Trail experience or something like that, but there's something about making that 24-mile journey from one side of the Grand Canyon to the other that I just think resonates with people, sticks with them, becomes a great sense of accomplishment. And so it was, for me, like a really wonderful experience to do that. And I'd like to go ahead and take a few minutes to read some excerpts from the book. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning of my talk, that there's really four elements that I was trying to think about as I was writing the book. And the one was the Grand Canyon itself and the natural world that you experience when you're on the trail. The people that you meet, we just met a few of those people vicariously through this presentation. The history, how did this whole trail come to be, and how was it built, who built it, what's that history like? And then there's these moments that we can have when we're down there. And so for this book, you know, I really had to turn to writing some of my own experiences and some of my own first-person accounts of those moments, and I just want to read a few of those to you to kind of give you a sense, you know, of the kind of things that you can experience when you're on the corridor trails. And I want to start with an experience where I was down at waking up from Bright Angel Campground. This was kind of starting our hike out of the canyon in the day up the Bright Angel Trail on a backpack trip. I wake to the swish and gurgle of Bright Angel Creek and the flickers of birdsong. I sleep in my tent, and my friend Fred Caleri sleeps outside during a November backpacking trip. He covers himself with a thick blanket, his only protection against the cold night air. As I stand over him, I wonder which end is his head. I expect I will need to nudge him awake soon. I slip past the spot where he sleeps. I cross the main path through the campground. I walk to the bank of the creek. I drop into a crouch and balance, perched on a small slope, in my sandals and thick wool socks. I dip my hands into the icy water and splash my face. I am in the waking world. I look downstream to watch a mule deer doe. She takes delicate steps toward the creek. She twitches her ears. I wonder how she made it, or how her parents or grandparents made it to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. I guess it was the same way I did down the trail. The canyon gives few other options. She walks farther downstream through small trees and high grasses. She disappears. After watching her, I ponder the animal world of the Grand Canyon. Looking at it from the rim, the craggy cliffs and buttes and high desert openness suggest inhospitality. Instead, the canyon bristles with life. Mule deer, desert bighorn sheep, wild turkey, ringtails, beavers, squirrels, chipmunks, coyotes, mountain lions, and all manner of birds, ravens, California condors, owls, hummingbirds, blue herons, songbirds, and more. The Grand Canyon is arid, but water is life, and life is water. The gorge is lined and dotted with oases and springs, dozens of side canyons with perennial water. And down the canyon's spiny middle runs the largest river in the Southwest, the Colorado. So animals thrive, and as writer and naturalist Rose Hauk suggests, they give the canyon perspective. They take a landscape that looks nearly two-dimensional from the rim and give it added depth. I wake Fred. He mumbles, finds fuller consciousness, and pulls on his boots. We stroll to Phantom Ranch along Bright Angel Creek. We go for breakfast, not wanting to fuss with making ours in the cold. I load up on pancakes, orange juice, and coffee. Morning brings tempered blessings. We bask in the joy of eating a hot meal at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. It is fuel we need to hike out to return to civilization. I follow Fred back to camp. He stretches out his long legs and prepares to travel. We pack our gear into our backpacks, trapping with it the earthy smells of camp. I swap my sandals for boots and lace up. I draw the air into my nostrils. I steel myself for the day's journey, 9 miles up the Bright Angel Trail, all the way to the top, a near mile of elevation gain in a day. At the start of the hike, I think of its sections and stages, crossing the Silver Bridge, following the river trail, turning south into Pipe Creek Canyon, walking up the canyon to Devil's Corkscrew, the corkscrew itself, and walking along Garden Creek into Indian Garden. And that's just the first half. The second half is 3,000 feet of elevation gain with 2 rest areas. I take in another deep breath to soothe the edges of my nerves. I nod to Fred. He says, "Let's do this." Compared to the others who stayed overnight in the campground, we are late starters. It is close to 9 a.m. All but 3 other campsites stand vacant. We will barely hike a quarter of a mile before running into people who ran down from the rim. The canyon favors the ambitious, or the ambitious favor the Grand Canyon. Fred and I walk over the Silver Bridge, which spans the roiling waters of the Colorado River. We see it under our feet through the graded walkway. As we walk to the center, the rhythm of our stride makes the bridge bounce. I keep my attention on the river. I look upstream and down. I imagine myself on a river trip with its own kind of rhythm. I consider the wisdom of the river and the rock it cuts. In the gorge, we experience nature and its different clocks, the age of geologic time and the time it takes for water to cut rock, the ancient cycles, the rituals of erosion, water and gravity versus the resistant stone. We cross to the other side. It gives me a feeling of progression. Part of me wants to turn back. Part of me wants to go on and go home. All of me knows I'll be back into the canyon, drawn to the bottom. The air warms into the 50s after the first few hours of light. It will hit the 70s by the afternoon. The temperature varies by as much as 40 degrees between the North Rim and Phantom Ranch. In November, the inner gorge furnace shuts down. The sun tracks at an angle, dipping to the south. Its light comes later and leaves earlier, offering more shade and only a slim chance of those triple-digit temperatures. I cast my gaze to the buttes and temples. The sun lights up their easterly sides. Fred's legs carry him 10 to 15 paces ahead of me. He rounds a bend in the river trail. I let myself enjoy the temporary solitude. As I walk, I hear some small rocks skitter from above. I look up and see nothing. I keep looking, interested in the tone of the sky. A desert bighorn sheep peers over the edge of the rock about 25 feet up. We stare at each other. For several seconds, we each consider the other. The sheep has thick horizontal lines for pupils and a fur that blends white, gray, and brown into a drab but beautiful earthy pelt. "Seth," Fred calls with a frantic whisper from his place on the trail. "Quick, you gotta see this." Fred's voice breaks my stare off at the bighorn. I look down the trail. I glance back up, but he has disappeared. I lumber as fast as I can with my pack. I turn the corner of the trail. Another bighorn sheep stands on the path. "Check him out," Fred says. The bighorn is between Fred and me. He has climbed down on the trail after Fred has passed. I admire the animal, all muscles and sinewy parts. The bighorn sighting brings magic to the morning. It's not any wildlife encounter, but a close one with one of the largest animals to roam the Grand Canyon. I take out the lightweight camera I brought for the trip,